troubleshoot. All right. Welcome to the Online Network of Independent Learning Professionals. Today we're going to be speaking with our very own Dani Watkins of Zenith Performance Solutions. She is going to be talking to us about Beyond, which is animation whiteboard videos. Those are super popular at the moment. I don't know if many other people are getting the same requests that I am, but the amount of requests that I get for those, creating those type of videos has definitely increased significantly over the past few months. And so we thought it would be a really good idea, because there's also a lot of interest in the community, to go over how Dani uses them, what her approach to them is, how she thinks about them, that kind of thing, what her process looks like. So we'll really appreciate Dani spending the time to walk us through that. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that if you want to share yours, you can, Dani. And maybe we've got some new folks on, so I don't know that everyone knows what you do and who you are. So maybe tell a little bit about Zenith Performance Solutions. And
okay. So I've been part of this community for probably, I mean, how long have you been doing it? 3 years, 4 years?
Yes, yeah, from the very beginning.
From the very beginning. And, you know, it's an amazing community. Whenever I talk about the articulate community, I always say whenever you go to Articulate Heroes and you go to the community, it's like getting a great big hug. Because everyone there wants to help each other. And I feel the same way about this group. Like, it's like getting a great big hug every time you come to these, because everyone here really wants to help each other. And we give each other work. I mean, at the end of the day, we've become this network of, I can't do this, you know, do you have some bandwidth, and doing things like that. So I own a company called Zenith Performance Solutions. We have been in business for 10 years. We started in 2008. We incorporated with the state because of a non-compete in 2010. So we've really been, I guess, 11 years since 2008 been consulting. So we do learning and development. I would say primarily we do e-learning. I do about 15% of delivery, because I have some delivery in my background, but the majority of the work that we do is e-learning. So this is a talk. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to actually share with some sound, some computer sound, so that you can hear some things as I go through this. And let me move a few things. Hold on. I got to pop out my chat. And I want to pop out my participants. Okay, so I've been doing this talk for a few years. So I started using e-learning whiteboarding tools a long time ago, when they were sort of, and when I would do this talk at different conferences, I would talk about that they were in their baby steps, or their toddler years of development, because while they were coming along, they weren't quite there yet. In that time, in the past 3 years, these tools have become very, very strong. So a few resources that I'll share with you. I wrote an article for ATD for one of their magazines, for the TD magazine, called Bringing E-Learning to Life. And I basically talk about everything I'm going to talk about today. And I talk about whiteboarding animations and how they are really helping you tell a story. And storytelling is so important in organizations, in e-learning, in micro-learning, whatever you're doing, storytelling resonates. And so if you can tell a story and then use a tool that helps you bring that to life, that's what it's all about. So that's sort of what this article talks about. You do have to be an ATD member to read the article or get their publication. It came out last May, so it's been almost a year. But I basically am going to talk about the 5 steps to how I create whiteboard animations, and some things, some gotchas, some things to look out for. And so that might be of interest to you. It's called Bring E-Learning to Life. If you search that and you're a member, you'll be able to see the whole article. So a couple of tools that are out there I'm going to talk about as well. I'm going to talk about Sparkle. That's the company, and then their tool is called VideoScribe. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That's the product we started with. So when we started doing these 3 years ago, we used VideoScribe, and the reason we chose it was because of price. I mean, quite honestly, it did what we wanted it to do. at an inexpensive price for a freelancer. And since then, we have transitioned over to Beyond, which is used to be Go Animate. More expensive tool, but is a little bit more robust. So we've transitioned over there. So let me just get right into it and talk about what whiteboarding is, and then how you might use it, and then go from there. So first question I have for you, and you can type this in the chat, is how many of you have done whiteboarding with a tool like Beyond, or even manually, which we'll talk about in a minute, or with like a video camera, or VideoScribe? Has anybody done that? I'm just curious kind of what your background is. Okay, only done scripts. Yeah, you know, Patty, and you bring up a good point. Like, sometimes it's not worth you learning a new tool. So like Christy Tucker, who's part of this group, she wrote a script and then called me and said, hey, can you do this for me? I'll pay you X amount of dollars. I don't want to learn the tool. I don't want to get a license. And so I said, sure. So I did it for her. So you have to kind of decide, right? But yeah, if you'd like to, there's so many uses. So let me just kind of show you a little bit. So this is just a very rudimentary VideoScribe. Okay, so I'm gonna speed through this so we can get really into the tool. So bear with me. This presentation is on our LMS, so you can go register for free and you can go through the entire presentation and watch all the videos in their entirety. But for time's sake, I'm gonna just kind of cruise through. This is our contact information. If you need to get a hold of me, you are welcome to. I am happy to help you. Again, it's like a great big hug. We are all instructional designers, and by helping each other, we make each other better, and we make our industry better. So I'm sort of the law of abundance, and always willing to help. So that's my contact information. Okay, so a couple of things that I'm going to talk about is really Beyond, and then I'm going to talk about, so we did a webinar, gosh, Patty, I don't remember when it was, but it was on plot. And after I saw that webinar, I decided that plot was a really good tool to storyboard these types of these sort of outputs. So when I storyboard for Storyline, I typically storyboard in Storyline, or I storyboard in PowerPoint. I never storyboard in Word anymore because I typically do pretty graphical storyboards. So what I've always struggled with whiteboard animations is how to storyboard those. And I have started using Plot to storyboard them, and I used that with the process with Christy Tucker. I storyboarded it, and I'll show you my process. And then she reviewed it in Plot, and she gave me feedback, and then I made her changes. And it was, I thought, pretty smooth. I'd love if she hops on, we'll have to see what she thinks, but I think she thought it was smooth as well. But Plot was a great tool for me to do that with. Okay, so hello. Hold on, I'm going to cruise. Okay, so really quickly, there are lots of different ways to use these tools, and I'm going to show you some examples and kind of get your juices flowing a little bit. The next video you're going to see is a video that I created.
Welcome to today's session. I hope you are ready to have fun and learn a lot too. Here's what we will be covering.
Okay, super simple example, right? Nothing fancy. I did this in like a few minutes. This was my previous slide, right? Typical Storyline, have a board, have some bullets. All I did was I recreated that in this.
Welcome to today's...
And I think I jump at one point. So I created this really quick little video. So think about, like, if you're doing an instructor-led training and you're going to do an introduction to who you are. and you do the same training over and over and over and over, why not create a really quick clip that you send out before they ever come to introduce yourself and what they're going to learn, and kind of give them a little teaser for whatever you're going to give them. You can even do that for e-learning. You're going to be pushing out some e-learning, and you know, we know that if we build it, they don't always come. So what we do sometimes the worst is we build all this great training, but we forget to tell people about it and market it. And so what about creating like a little teaser in one of these tools that you could send out to sort of market that piece of learning? Just an idea. Okay. So what is whiteboard animation? Let me show you how it started, and then I'll show you how it has come along. This is how it started. You would find a whiteboard, and you would hire an artist, and you would hire a video crew, and you would hire lighting, and you would hire all of that stuff, and you would basically record someone illustrating their story. And so if you go to rsa.org, you'll see all kinds of different whiteboards, but truly this is where it started. These would cost a lot of money. Anywhere from...
There was a study released last year in the US, and it basically said that 71% of the American workforce is not happy at work.
I mean, look at that illustration and how long something like that would take to create. I mean, it's crazy. And this would cost, you know, a good penny.
Is disengaged by their organisation, 71%. And actually, a lot of this, technology is part of the problem. And I wanted to address that. I wanted to try and show people that there is a very different way to use sort of the technology piece, but it doesn't really stop there. In fact, the big...
I mean, like, look at that. And so that's really where whiteboarding animation started. And very, very technical, I mean, and very expensive, you know, 10 years ago.
I'm sure you've heard the buzz. Social media may be the next big thing. What's it all about? This is social media in plain English. Let's take a visit to Scoopville, a town that's famous for ice cream.
Okay, so then it sort of evolved into, let's draw the illustrations. Plain English does this a lot. They'll push different pieces of paper onto a white surface, still have a video camera over the top, and sort of then narrating that story that they're building.
For over 20 years, Big Ice Cream Company has been making high-quality ice cream with a big factory in town.
Okay, so that was sort of the next evolution. Then it evolved into this. This was done in VideoScribe, and now we're using software to do this. So there are no cameras, there's no whiteboards, there's no markers, there are no hands. That's all software that's sort of doing that for us. And this one would happen to be done in VideoScribe. So any questions sort of about that evolution or anything that I can speak to so far?
Nope, that's really neat to see.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing the evolution. I had no idea they actually had the paper.
Yeah.
Very cool. Interesting.
Okay, so then this one goes on, but let me show you then how it evolves even further. I think this is the one. Similar example, right? Different software. And actually, I misspeak. This one was in VideoScribe as well. So different look and feel, but this one was done in VideoScribe as well. Now let me show you my favorite. I mean, that was done in VideoScribe as well. So what's really cool is that whatever tool you're using, obviously this has a very different purpose. It's a very artistic purpose. So not necessarily a training purpose, but both were done in pieces of software, same piece of software actually, VideoScribe. And I'll talk through a little bit about how you do that. So VideoScribe allows you, and I haven't played as much with this in Beyond, but it'll allow you to bring in any SVG and it will draw it for you, right? So an SVG, a vector graphic. So the way this was done is she did a great blog on it. She did it on a whiteboard. So she hand drew it on a whiteboard. Then she digitized it. So she took a picture of it. She made it into an image on her phone or camera, whatever. Brought it into Illustrator, and then using Illustrator, she traced all of the different lines in the order that she wanted them drawn. So you use the pencil tool and you basically redraw in the order that you want it to redraw it. And then you save it as an SVG and you export it, and then you import that SVG file into VideoScribe, and VideoScribe knows exactly how that image was drawn and which lines came first, second, third, fourth, and 10th. And then it basically draws the image for you using the software. So if you have an image in any tool that you want drawn a very specific way, if you go into Illustrator and you retrace over the lines in the order that you want them and then export it and bring it into VideoScribe, it will draw it for you in the way that you want it. I know, I would love to have, but you know, those art skills, okay, so here's my tip that I always share when I present this at conferences is many of us would say we're not good artists. Right? Many of us would say that. If I said, how many of you are artists? And I always ask that question when I do this in a conference, and like 2 people raise their hand. And I'm like, no, really all of you are artists. It's just crafting your skill. Look around wherever you're sitting, look around your room, and in every object in your room is just a shape, right? Your monitor is just a rectangle. Your laptop is 2 rectangles put together. Right? My coffee cup is really just a circle and then, a flat 3D dimensional surface, right? So everything you do is a shape. And when you start looking at your world in shapes, all of a sudden you become more of an artist. So I would challenge that. Okay, so that's what the tools can do. I like to show that because I think you need to recognize that it can be as simple as images on a board. For training purposes, it could be something very artistic. So why would you use a whiteboard animation? So type in the chat window for me all of the different ways that your little brains are swimming right now, of all the different ways you could use a whiteboard animation in the work that you do. Yeah, Bridget, if you're not a great illustrator, you can do it in PowerPoint. Okay, here are the steps. You'd right-click, save it as a picture, and then you take it into Illustrator and export it as an SVG. Simple as that. Yeah, showing a process or flow. Yeah, telling a story. What else? What else would you use it for? I already said one of them earlier, and Kelly commented on it. Yeah, have human contact, that's right. Yeah. Scenarios, yep, absolutely. Marketing, I said earlier. So here are just a few different ways, a few different ways that you could use it, right? You could use it for marketing. You could use it for a shareholder meeting. You could use it to tell a story. You could use it to show a series of steps, or like Kelly said, a process or a flow. You could use it for a product launch. You could use it for conferences. So, and then the one that I added to this list recently was I used it to talk about our team. So I had to fill out an RFP recently, and they had used those like 1999 Word fields that you had to type all your answers into those fields, and you can't do any formatting. And it was horrendously looking. And so I created a video scribe of our team and what we do and who we are. Instead of like typing 4 paragraphs, I tried to show what we can do in talking about who we are. So you could even use it as, for an RFP to talk about who you are. You could use it on your website. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I've used it too when I've done a trade show, and I've had a video playing that talks about who we are. And it plays with a little bit of music in the background while we're at our trade show booth. Okay, so what I love to do is show you my very first video scribe. It is so crappy. Do you have projects where you go back and you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Or how far I have come, right? And you look at it and you're like, oh, this is horrible. So let me tell you the things that are horrible about it. The resolution is horrible on the graphics. We couldn't get anything better from the client. You can't even read it. But they loved it at the time. It was like 3 or 4 years ago, right? And so the purpose of this was basically to show managers how they should be coaching. And they didn't have time for video. It was a really quick fix. And so we said, well, let's show them in a video scribe how they should be writing on this coaching sheet when they have one-on-ones with their salespeople. Simple as that. So let me show you. So really quickly, we just wanted to show you, okay, here's this document you should be using in your one-on-ones, and here's what it looks like when you're coaching somebody. Like, here are the things you would do on the form. Simple as that. Resolution's not great. Video scribe at the time had only been about a year, 6 months. So it didn't do a lot. It was in its baby stages of development. This was about 4 or 5 years. Actually, it was probably about 4 years ago. So that was my very first. I've come a long way. Okay, so where could you use these? You could use them in an instructor-led classroom. You could use them in Storyline as a video. You could use them in Rise. You could use them in Captivate. You could post them out on YouTube and make them public or private. Anywhere you can post an MP4, you can use these videos. So think about your next workshop that you're teaching, or think about the next course that you're doing, and tons of applications. So here's an example of one that we did for Storyline. So we did this course a long time ago on crude oil by rail, and we wanted to show the history of crude oil and how it progresses. So what we did is we matched the look and feel, and this was a long course. It had a lot of content in it, and this was just one slide of like 80. So let me just show you this one.
While movements of crude oil by rail have significantly increased over the past 10 years, the percentage of crude oil and petroleum products moving by rail is still relatively low as a percentage of all freight rail cargo. Originated carloads of crude oil on U.S. Class I railroads, including the U.S. Class I subsidiaries of Canadian railroads, rose from 9,500 in 2008 to 233,698 in 2012, and to 410,249 in 2015.
Okay, so we just took our graphics that we were using throughout the rest of the course. We dropped them into Beyond, which at the time was GoAnimate, and then we just created a video that would sort of talk about the history of crude rail. So it's kind of that timeline example. This was another one that we did where we did a case study. So this was a super boring training on internal controls. for the Department of Education. And we wanted to embed a case study through 4 modules that really helped people understand, like, the work you do every day, this is how internal controls could be impacted. These are the things you need to look for when you're approving grants. And so this was just one of them of like 4 that we spaced out through the different modules. And did I link to it? I don't think I linked to this one for proprietary reasons, but you get the idea. That was done in Go or in Beyond as well. So this is another example that we did recently, and this we did in Rise. So this was the paragraph, and Patty will laugh, and so will Bridget, and so will Keith, because they were on this project with me. This was the paragraph of information that we were given by the client, all around retirement and just kind of an overview of the numbers of people who are retiring. So this is what we were given, and I'll show you the video that we created instead of that paragraph. And by the way, it never got real audio. So we never dropped in real audio for this. So it is text to speech. So keep that in mind.
The practice of providing benefits to retirees began in the late 1940s and 1950s. It was a time of great economic expansion. Retirees were a small percentage of the active working population. Benefits were simple to provide, emerged out of unions, and the cost was a small part of total compensation. 79 million baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964, will turn 65 between 2011 and 2029. By the year 2030, 20% of the U.S. population will be over 65. In 2017, it is projected that Social Security will pay out more than it takes in. In 2020, an estimated 20 million people will be eligible for Medicare benefits.
Okay, so that's an example of just taking some content that you have. I love to use this for math and for statistics. Now I could, let's see, and then in class trainers probably talked over it. Yeah, probably. Don't say that, Bridget. No, I'm kidding. But you're probably right? But what happens is, right, is a trainer might, whether it's online or whether it's face-to-face, they would typically read this, or they'd have like 8 bullets. I think what we received was this paragraph of information and all these bullets. And what a better way to present it to learners as to show them more graphically sort of what all this content was. So that's what we chose to do. And then we dropped it in a Rise course. This was a course that I helped Christy with. So Christy was working on a video for FIRST, and it's all around diversity and inclusion. And they're actually going to just post this on their public YouTube page. So it's going to be for public consumption. And it was for kids who are part of the FIRST program. It's like a robotics Lego program. And so she wrote the script, and then I went through and we built it. And so that's another example. So you can kind of see like the look and feel of these can be anything that you want. Okay, so let me talk tools, and then I'm going to jump into it. So you can hire somebody else to do this. There are a couple of companies, quite frankly, oh, and then of course your favorite freelancer. So you could, the Whiteboard Animation Studio and TrueScribe, it's interesting to watch their business models because they don't really, they used to do all this for you, and now like people can do it so easily that I think they're having to reinvent themselves a little bit. So yes, Kelly, the retirement one was done in Beyond. It was. So here are all the tools that you can go out and purchase and do it with. So you've got one that I haven't used, but I see in my Facebook feed all the time because they know me so well, is Doodly. I haven't used it, but it pops up all the time as an ad, as a sponsor, and I haven't clicked on it. But it is out there. I've had a couple people in my sessions when I teach this at conferences who have used it. Or at least have gotten the license but haven't opened it yet, but are like, yeah, we have a license. VideoScribe is the other one. So it's going to be a little It's great for artists because it handles SVGs a little bit better. So if you want to do sort of those illustrated drawings and you want to control how it's drawn, I would go the video scribe route. It is cheaper as well. Go Animate and Beyond is more expensive, but it has a Teams account if you choose to do that, which for freelancers isn't great, but if you do have a team like me, it's nice because we can share projects. Go Animate was purchased by Beyond probably about a year ago. I don't know this, so I'm just making this up. I think they were purchased because Go Animate was Flash-based, and Beyond's platform is not. And so when you were working in the tool, like I have legacy videos, and then I have Beyond videos that I've built in Beyond. So there was a little bit of a transition, but they were purchased, and Beyond honestly had more technology that they could apply. So it became a nice partnership. Powtoons is another one that's out there. It's super inexpensive, but it's a little more cartoony. And then Easy Sketch Pro is another one. So you can kind of go play around with those and see what you think. Okay, so I have a handout. I talk about drawing options, like if you're going to draw it or if you're going to use their built-in clip art. I will put here, I'm going to put this, I think I can put this in the, I don't remember what I copied last. Okay, I didn't copy it. So I'll copy the link here in a moment, and I'll give you the handout that has a bit of a job aid that goes through drawing and not drawing. So I'm going to skip that slide. And then where do I start? So here's my process. And you might take this process and you might tweak it a little bit. This is what I have found works really effectively. And for those of us who work hourly, the more effective we can be, the happier we are. So number one, write your story. And I mean, like, sit down and write a story. So for me, what that looks like is it's getting in the 70s and 80s here in Denver. So what that means to me is if I need to write a story or a little scenario, I go sit on my porch with a beer in the evening and I write my story. And I literally type it on my iPad. And I type whatever story I'm trying to tell. So if it's a story about crude oil by rail, or if it's a story about retirement, or if it's a story about a scenario and a character, I literally write the story in just a very sort of text flow. So you might either write the story or you might be given the story by your SME, right? So in this case, this is an example where the SME gave me these paragraphs of information. And this, again, was about 4 years ago, and I had to turn this into a video scribe. And then if I write the story, I usually get a sign off on the story. So I send it off to them, have them sign off, yes, this looks good, they wordsmith it, and then we go from there, okay? So write the story. Step 2, start creating your scribe. So what does that mean? It means organizing your storyboard and graphics or sketches, and then maybe getting a sign off. So this is how I did it with Christy. Christy handed me the script. I started laying it all out in Beyond. I took screenshots of it and I threw it in Plot. And then I sent it off for her for a sign off. So I'll show you what that is. I didn't pull that one up and I should have, so I apologize. And I'll show you kind of how that, yeah, thanks, Patty, for that link. So what I did is I created it in Beyond, which I'll show you here in a minute. And then what I did is I went and laid it out in Plot, and I sent it off to Christy for her review. Okay, I'll come back. So then I create the scribe. Once I get her feedback, then I create the scribe, and I'm going to show you how to do that. That's where I started adding all of the animations. I add all the facial expressions. I add the character. That's where I really start to pull the things together. This is the scribe, again, 4 years ago, one of my first scribes that I created in Video Scribe, and it matched the script that you saw earlier about quantify those 2 paragraphs that my client handed me, like all these numbers. It was how to quantify a sale. And that's how we created it in there. And then this is an example of how we did it for First. So when I did this with, there it goes. When I did this with Christy, the way we did it is we did it and she reviewed it here. So I put in my script, and then you'll see she gave me feedback. So what I do is I lay it all out because I want to confirm that they like the characters I picked. There are so many characters to pick from that we got to narrow them down. So I like to get that sign off here where I say, okay, here's what I'm going to, and I use Snagit to take screenshots, and then I point out what things are. So like, here's Ryan and here's Tim. And then over here is Jeffrey. And so I've pointed out all the characters and I've sort of laid out the backgrounds. And then for all the different pieces in their script, I say, okay, here are all the types of art that I want to use. And so I say, okay, this is what I want to use for the computer, and this is what I want to use for the food, and I've got the script underneath. So I sort of lay out all the graphics and what I'm thinking so that they can approve them before I start animating this stuff. Because then it becomes more. So once I create the scribe, I also drop in text to speech. So I have found that if you can drop in text to speech, it's going to help the review process as well. So I don't actually record the actual, so I drop in text to speech in step 2. Then in step 3, I send it off, they approve it, they change anything they want to change, and so recording the actual audio with talent. The great thing is I've already got it timed. So when I go in to drop in the new audio, it's just dropping and then just tweaking it a little bit. And I usually do that with Audacity, or you could obviously use any of the Adobe Creative Suite products as well to do that if you like pay for those already. And then I usually get a sign off at that point. And then I sync the audio. And then I publish and I implement it. So I put it wherever it's going to go. So let's go into Beyond and we will take a look. Any questions? I'll pause there while I'm logging in here. Any questions?
Yeah, feel free to either speak out a question or put it in the chat, either way, if you have any. You can just do so much with this. It's really interesting to see all the different ways you used it.
Mind blown, right? I mean, it truly is pretty powerful. So, so here's the one we did, because this is just one about us. And this is one that's like not fancy, but I needed something for an RFP at 11:30 at night that was due at midnight. And so this is what I pulled together. So this is one example. I dropped in this image, I imported the image, and then
I am Dani Watkins, the founder, owner, and CLEO of Zenith Performance Solutions. I'm an instructional designer, e-learning developer, and learning expert. This is Megan Longo, a learning experience consultant. She is our very talented instructional designer with a strong e-learning development, and she keeps the place running, and Megan and I on. While we are a small team, we are deeply connected to the world of instructional design and training, and work with a deep bench of tours.
So I went through and I did this really quickly. So that's one example, right? You can create your own characters. So you'll notice Megan and my characters and Shailene's characters look like us. So I created some custom characters in Beyond that I can do that with. So let's just start with a new video. So I'm just going to click on Make a Video. And it doesn't really matter what you select here, because you can change at any time. So I'm going to go with the business friendly. Now, here's the deal. When GoAnimate combined with Beyond, they didn't combine all their characters. So the contemporary is all Beyond stuff that they had before they merged or before they bought them. The business friendly is all Go Animates, graphics and people. And then the whiteboarding is, I think was Go Animates. So when they came together, they haven't really combined all those platforms. So like when you do a search, you have to search kind of both buckets, if you will. So I'll show you that here in a minute. So again, with my process, I would take my script and I would start laying out characters, and I would start laying out graphics that I want to use in different scenes. And then I would send that off to get it approved, put it in plot, send it off to get it approved. And then I would come back in here, and I would do my text to speech. I would do all my animation. I would do all of that heavier lifting, if you will. So what happens is it starts with just a blank kind of a background template. And you've got these scenes down here. You can add your text down here. And the biggest thing I want to point out is that this is movable. And if you click on this little arrow on your timeline, there's lots of stuff hiding under here. Those are like the things as a self-taughter that you don't always notice. Across the top, you've got where you can upload audio, you can upload graphics, you can upload, and if you click on upload, you'll see all the stuff I've uploaded. So you can see I uploaded logos for projects. You go all the way down. I actually just cleaned this out, but I can see all kinds of things. I have a team account, so we have a shared library. You wouldn't have a shared library if you don't have a team account, but I can share with my team. You've got characters. So here's again, you wouldn't know this as a self-taughter. So this is all the stuff that Go Animate had. These are all the characters that are in the whiteboard animation, and these are all the characters that are part of the contemporary, which Beyond had before they merged. Okay, so when you search, like let's just, I'll use a good example from Christy's project. She needed a character with a hijab, right? So a headscarf. And so basically I searched, you can tell I've already searched it. And in the contemporary, there are two characters who have a hijab, right? Pain in the butt, but now I got to go over here and I got to search it over here as well. So you have to search in every bucket, which in my opinion is not great, but it is what it is. So you just have to remember to do that. So if like, let's say I'm looking for a character, let's just say student. I've got my students in this bucket, I've got my students in this bucket, and I've got my students in this bucket. So you got to remember to search in all three buckets, depending on the style you're looking for. Okay, so if I go here, I can go, and I can also just peruse this, but if you peruse, you will be here for days. So I would highly recommend searching. So I can insert a character really quickly. Let's just insert her. Okay, here she is. She looks kind of sad. That's unfortunate. Okay, so there she is. And so that's sort of my first step, right? I'm going to start, and let's say I don't like this background. So if I click on the background, I can go over here to the right, and I can change the background. So again, if I don't want an office, remember I have 3 buckets. She's the one that's excluded. That's right. So I have to search all 3. So I'm gonna, let's just say I'm looking for a park. I just did this the other day. So I'm looking for a park. Again, I can look in my 3 buckets for different parks. Okay. So I can go find a park and I can pop that in. And now we're all sitting outside. Okay. Now here's what's really cool is you can change the colors that you need to. So for Christy's project, I needed sort of a fall park, and then I needed a spring park to sort of show the evolution of a school year. So I was able to modify the graphic, and I could change out the colors using shapes and piecing shapes together, which is an advanced activity. But if you look at a background and you're like, you know what, I need these trees to be orange, you can manipulate the pictures using shapes. Again, look at your world in shapes. This is just a rectangle, right? That then I might mask with a triangle. right? So I can make the grass brown, kind of fallish, and I can put in a triangle over the top. And if I group them, now I have a fall scene. So again, look at it in shapes. So I can go through and I can change those. Across the top, I also, and let me go back here a second. So the other thing that I have is I have these skies. So if it's a night sky, I can make the sky darker, right? So when I'm clicked on my background, it's like anything else, I can manipulate the background, okay? So then I'm gonna go in and I can another session for another time, you know, you can make custom characters. You can add props. So again, if I'm looking for a coffee mug, I've got lots of coffee mugs to pick from. So let's just pick this one, right? Let's make it a really out of proportion coffee mug, just so you can see it, and we love coffee. And then on all of these objects, so I can also do, let me go back. I can do all kinds of statistical things. I can add text and I can add music or audio, okay? So I can add text to speech, or I can add mic recording, or I can find voice talent. I've never used that because I use other tools. But then what I can do is I can animate any of this stuff. So I can, if I have an object selected, whatever object I have selected, I can go over here and I can do an enter effect. Okay, and I can do an exit effect. So let's say I wanted that to be a whiteboard animation. I could do it with or without a hand, or I could do the writing only. So let's just see what happens. Some of these characters already have some animation in them. So, right, okay, so now it looks like he's touching her rear end, so we're gonna move her, because that's probably not appropriate. Okay, so let's move her over here. But I would bring this coffee in later by just like storyline, by just popping it over here, right? And do it that way. I can add exits, and then I can also make them walk. So let's just try this guy. Let's go look at him. So he's got an action, right? Because his hand was down and it came up. So I can look at the action. I can look at his expression, and right now the action, let's make him cry. I don't know. He's really sad. So I can do an expression, and I can also give him some preset animation. The other thing that I can do with him is I can also give him a motion path. So let's add a motion path to him, and we're gonna say, okay, I want you to start here, and I want you to end over here. Right? And now let's just preview what I did. All I did was move. If I wanted him to walk, what I would do is I'd click on him again, and we're going to give him an action, and I'm going to search walk. And this is fast, and I totally recognize that. So I'm presenting at ATD ICE in DC next Monday, and I will be doing like a 2-hour free webinar, because that session's only an hour. Usually I do this hands-on for 3 hours at ATD Tech Knowledge and Online Learning. But at ATD ICE, I only have an hour. So I'm doing basically what I'm doing with you really fast. I'm going to do a 2-hour webinar that's free. And as soon as I have that link, I'll post it, and you're welcome to come. I also highly recommend Vion's webinars. They are mind-blowing. They will give you so many ideas. So definitely sign up for their webinars, because you'll learn a tremendous amount there too. Okay, so let's make him walk, and he doesn't need to be pulling a briefcase. We're gonna make him angry stomping, okay? Let's watch him. And then he cries on his way out, right? Okay, so what you do is, if I wanted him to angry stomp first, and then I wanted him to cry, what I would do is I'd actually do that in 2 separate scenes. And what I would do is I would just say, continue last scene, over here, I would just make him angry stomp. And over here, I might move him back and I might just have him stand there and cry or whatever it is, right? Yep, because he left his coffee behind. That's right, Bridget. So, you know, the sky is the limit here. And that's why I think the process is so important. Like, I know that I hope that this was enough of beyond, but as an instructional designer, if you don't have a process, you will lose money on these projects. And you can see why, right? Because you start animating things and then the client doesn't like it, so you have to go in and fix things. Follow the process and get approvals at each process and communicate what they're doing, so that, like, when I did this with Christy, I had all the characters identified before I started moving people around and giving them expressions and things like that. So I don't think you can teach one without the other, in my opinion. I think you're doing a disservice. So I'd highly recommend this. Oh, I'm great. Nicole, that's awesome. Yeah. And I would love to know your process. You know, some people do it differently. I find that my clients need to hear the text to speech, so then we can make sure that before we record it and we pay for that, that they like it. So let me show you how to do text to speech. I know I only have about 7 minutes, so let me show you how to do that, because once you start building these scenes, then you can put in some text to speech. And so let's just do this one, because this one's easy. So what I'm going to do is click on the scene, and I'm going to go up to audio, and I'm going to add some audio. And we're going to do text to speech, and I'm going to select, now you can assign the audio to a person or to the slide. So in this case, he's kind of pouty, so we're going to apply it to him because he's all cranky. So we're going to say, I like it, Bridget, I left my coffee behind. Okay, and then I'm going to choose, oops, I hit produce, and I needed to make it a male voice. So let me make it a male voice. And let's do the United Kingdom, just because that's the first one I found. And I'm going to generate it again. And then you should be able to hear it.
I left my coffee behind.
Right. So with a real actor, that would be a little bit better. But then when I'm done, I just click out of it. There's my audio. And I can then move that audio however I need it. Now remember, this little guy's hiding. Right? So you've got some animations happening. And now when I preview the whole thing from start,
I left my coffee behind.
Right? So not like, again, you would create this a whole lot different. Yeah, I agree. I think we have, you know, Mark, you bring up a great point. We have started putting text to speech in our storyline files before we send off alpha, because we have them review the Word version, and we're finding that if they can hear it as well, we get better feedback. So while it takes us longer to do our alphas because we're dropping in some text to speech, we found that it's really saving us time in the beta, because then in the beta we're just dropping in the real audio and tweaking that syncing just a bit, and we're good to go. So that's the other thing to think about, is when you lay out all your scenes, how are you going to lay out your script so that your audio, like if you work with an audio person and they cut it for you, do it by scene so you don't have to cut it, and they'll cut it if they cut it for you. So now if I wanted to add a new, let's just say a new blank scene, I could use a blank, or I could say add template, and then just to open up more choices for you. You know, you can do different topic areas. Like let's just go to, I don't know, this one, right? So you can literally do like a technical training where they actually are punching something in, potentially. I mean, the other thing that I didn't talk about, but I want you to know it's here, you can add camera shots. So think about a camera person. You could zoom in on something and then zoom out on something. So if I wanted to zoom in on him because he's really sad, I could zoom in the camera. could add the camera, and I could zoom in on him or his coffee when we say the word coffee, and then I could just zoom back out. That's an advanced, like you can go in and add those things. So I always tell people, start with the characters, start with the props, get it laid out, then add some of your emotions and your expressions. I don't add camera stuff until the end, and I usually don't. Like I usually don't need it because I'm telling a story that doesn't need it, but you could add it if you wanted to. Now, there's so many other things you can do. You can do masking, you can do, I mean, lots. So when you're done, what you're gonna do is you're gonna hit save. And then you click back on Beyond, and you'll see it listed on my front page here. And then what I can do is I can publish it to a video or to an animated GIF. So if you didn't want a video, you just wanted an animated GIF that automatically played and would loop, right? Of them dropping something, maybe, you could create a GIF as well. GIF, I don't know, GIF maybe. And then you can share. So you could have your client go in and review it. What I do, I drop it into a storyline file. I publish the storyline file to review, Articulate Review, and then I have them put all their content, their feedback there. Because otherwise you get these emails with all this content and that just makes my head spin. So what I did for Christy is I would pop it into a storyline file, pop it into review, and then her client and her would go and she would go in and add all her content. So.
Very cool. That's a great idea.
2 minutes. I have 2 minutes to spare. I didn't go into
You did great, yeah.
I didn't go into VideoScribe, but you can get trials of each of these. They're not long trials. So have some time where you can play with it if you're going to play with it. Because I think it's only like 7 or 14 days. But go get trials and see which tool you think is going to best meet your needs. Beyond is more expensive, but I think it's worth the investment because I can show you just the way we've used it, if that would be helpful in a minute. So this is a diversity course. They have this whole iceberg activity that they do. And in the iceberg activity, we have a fish analogy that they do too.
Think of a fish swimming in the ocean. As he swims in his area of the ocean, he is probably not aware of the water in which it swims. He doesn't know what world lies beyond his area. It is important to recognize the complexity.
We've just popped them into this course here and there to add a little bit of explanation. So, okay.
Very cool.
Questions?
Awesome. Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Everybody's just saying like how incredibly helpful it was to see your process and some examples. So I know we're at the top of the hour, so I want to respect everyone's time, but thanks so much. My gosh, I will definitely, I'm glad we recorded this too, because I'm going to be referring back to it.
Because I went fast.
No, it's really great though. I mean, it was a lot of information, packed full of information. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad.
Awesome.
If you have questions, you have my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. If you're going to be at ATD ICE, come say hi. And I will post when we do a webinar. I'll post that. Yeah. That's
perfect. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again for such incredible information. Learned a lot, and we'll see everybody in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Thanks, you guys.
Have a good rest of your week.
Sure. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.